Okay, let's get into it. So thank you everyone for taking the time to jump in on the sessions. So this is the first of 4 sessions we're going to be hosting. I'm going to be hosting on some informative, hopefully, and some insightful musings and learnings around how to run a SaaS company. So the foundation of this came from a couple of discussions I've had with founders recently in demos and on sales calls and wherever else. And essentially, people start to ask, well, how do we do what we do at Baremetrics and as part of a wider SaaS company inside a private equity firm? And it started to occur to me that a lot of founders out there, particularly in the early days, don't have a support network around them to be able to bounce ideas off, to think about what they're doing is the right thing and really validate their strategy moving forward. Baremetrics used to have a service called Make More. And it was a subscription service where you could jump in and participate in some masterclass style engagements with industry experts. But I really wanted to bring that back out to the public and just sort of make it freely available for anyone who wants to consume that kind of information. So the information I'm going to cover today in the next 4 sessions is based around how we do what we do and why we believe that you can also benefit from some of the methods that we employ as a SaaS company across the board. So let's jump straight into it, and feel free to drop questions in the chat, and I'll also pause at the end and we can go through some Q&A if needed. So I'm going to share my screen, jump into the presentation. Hopefully everyone can see. Great. So we at Baremetrics really are about helping entrepreneurs achieve their purpose. And what does that mean? Well, we believe that a lot of people start their SaaS companies, start their ideas with a fundamental belief that they can change the world, they can solve a problem, they can do something better than what currently exists. So we recognize that purpose that they're trying to find, and it's our purpose then to help them on that path. The way we do that is Baremetrics as a platform will help you analyze your current state and identify a way forward into the future. We try and give you the succinct data that you need to succeed. We like to help you automate otherwise manual processes. And ideally, we position ourselves as experts in the field of subscription analytics and insights. But today is less about Baremetrics and more about how you, as potential startup founders, entrepreneurs, acquirers, anyone who's running a SaaS company or any subscription-based company indeed, is able to benefit from our learnings. This is just a bit more about why we do what we do, but really Baremetrics insights, analytics, right? We want to uncover the insights for you, save time, and make decisions that are going to help you grow. Who am I? So who am I to stand in front of you and tell you what to do or give you advice on how to run your SaaS company? So I originally cut my teeth as an army officer in the Australian Army for a little over a decade, where I really understood the foundational elements of leadership, how to manage a small team, how to go through particularly strenuous periods of work, and really build a strong foundation of training, development, and learning in a high-stress environment. I then moved into the corporate world where I was in charge of digital projects for a government contracting organization, implementing new systems, acquiring new systems for projects and technical transformations across multiple locations in Australia. I then got a call, tap on the shoulder from an ex-colleague of mine and said, hey, I'm working in this SaaS space. Would you like to come and have a look? I didn't necessarily need to move across at that stage. I was happy and comfortable in my current job, but SaaS represented a world that was completely foreign to me, and someone who enjoys and appreciates a challenge. I jumped at that, and that was about 6 years ago. Since that time, I've had the opportunity to meet some incredible people across the world. I was able to participate in a Harvard Business School executive program, which really gave me some insights into larger corporations and problems that are dealt with at much larger scale than sort of micro SaaS or small scale SaaS. But really, it has been able to strengthen my position as someone who not only was able to run a SaaS company now, but bring those elements of military leadership, technical transformation and development in the corporate world through a formal education framework like Harvard Business School and others into sort of what is the world of scrappy startups and SaaS companies. In my spare time, I love doing strongman. I like lifting heavy things and throwing them around. I am a golfer, not a good one, but something that I want to plant now so I'm good at it when I'm older and pottering around the greens. I live on the coast, so I love to go for a fish on a Sunday afternoon. And most of my spare time is taking up being a dad and a husband, ferrying kids around to soccer, ballet, acrobatics, whatever else the flavor of the month is for my two kids. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Today is going to be session one, follow the data. The follow-on sessions that you're all invited to, and please, we'll continue to send out invites for these following sessions, and they'll all be available for recording and a copy of the deck. Today is about following the data, but we'll follow up with banging the drum, no lead left behind, and holding hands. And these are just fundamental themes to highlight what we're going to go into. But really why I want to talk about this and go into it is I fundamentally believe that every SaaS company is able to be run with a core set of hygienes, a core set of standards that are then applied to the context in which you operate. And I'll hark back to my military days in that at the start of my training, very early in the 2000s, we are taught the foundations of war, the principles of war, right? And the art of war is often thrown around. I'm going to go full tech bro here and bring up Sun Tzu art of war into the tech space, but in a different way. I'm not going to use it to quote that the boardroom is the battlefield or anything like that. But the art of war is often studied in early military training as what it represents in its fundamental strategy, the fundamental principles of battlefield management, and how to successfully win a battle. So things like Sun Tzu art of war are often brought up as a method to study what represents an effective military strategy. And these are just some of the principles here you can see on the screen. But the last line there is probably what's most important when it comes to fundamental military strategy, in that according as circumstances are favorable, one should modify one's plans. And what that means is we are taught to fight a war, right? The foundational principles give us the tools to fight a war in any context. It is not until we enter a theater of conflict, that is to say a new market, where we have to apply those foundational principles to the context in which we're entering. I fundamentally believe that that's how SaaS companies are as well. There are a core set of principles that allow you to run a SaaS company. It is then up to you to figure out how to run your SaaS company in this market, in this industry, with this ICP and your product. So what I'm going to present to you today is a collection of ideas on how to run a SaaS company, how to fight a war, and then it will be up to you to figure out how to use those principles to fight the war, how to get into your space and really nail your SaaS company using those principles as a foundation. So today, we're going to talk about follow the data, but essentially these are the core standards across the board that Baremetrics operates under as a company owned by a private equity firm called Xenon Partners. We've developed these standards over the years based on over 100 different companies that we've ran and exited over time. And we believe that these represent our foundational standards that we can apply to any SaaS company and then adapt and overcome. So every company of ours has these standards as part of their KPIs, has these standards as part of their monthly board meeting reports and ongoing performance management. And so inside Baremetrics, we absolutely adhere to these standards as well. And today I'll show you a little bit about how we can break those standards down into manageable chunks and how you may be able to implement them as part of your overall strategy and execution. So today's about follow the data. What we're going to cover is how to craft clear goals from the very top of our strategic thinking, how to set goals for your company and how do they cascade down into individual levels via a SMART methodology, how to crush a campaign. So how to have a refined focus for 1 month at a time on a particular conversion point, a particular landing page, whatever it might be, being able to focus on a particular campaign and apply effort and energy to ensure that that is well executed and managed. How to establish variance, what the importance of variance and experimentation on all of your marketing material, landing pages, and ads, what it means to be statistically significant. So we're actually extracting value from those experiments, and then having an agreed source of truth and what that means for us. Finally, at the end of this, we'll go through some examples of best practice when it comes to different elements of variations and experimentation you might want to follow. So SMART goals. This is something that most people are probably familiar with. And depending on your background, you will come at goal setting from a different framework. SMART represents simple, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Each of those aspects are particularly important to understand and apply because it just breaks down the complexity of goals to small, manageable chunks. If you find yourself setting between 5 and 10 goals a quarter, you will likely fail the majority of them. If you find yourself setting 1 to 3 simple, smart goals per quarter, you will likely succeed in all 3. This is backed up by continual research around goal achievement, and it is important that those goals are simple, measurable, achievable and relevant, and time-bound, i.e. monthly, quarterly, half-yearly, yearly, whatever that might be. So how does this manifest itself into a SaaS goal, for example? Well, what we might see is, I want to increase my PQL conversion rate, okay? Simple statement, that's all it is. How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to move it from 25%, which is what I know my current baseline is, to 30%, so I can measure that success. Is it achievable? Well, absolutely it's achievable because it's only a marginal increase, and I believe by the volume of traffic and PQLs I currently get, that I can achieve that 5% to 30%. How is that relevant? Well, I've got post-sign-up workflows that are absolutely able to be optimized. I have the opportunity to step in there and change my email sequence, my onboarding flow, my product tours by optimizing my post-sign-up workup flows. And my time bound is I'm going to do that no later than 30th September, right? End of the quarter, for example. This last point here, while it's not part of the SMART goals, I believe is important because some people will use SMART goals and filter them down into OKRs, which is outcomes, key results. And more often than not, if you are a fan of OKRs, there is a band of stretch goals or stretch achievement. So a fail criteria allows you to understand that at any given point in time, I might look at my PQL conversion rate and my trailing 3-month average is 28%. Is that a win because I didn't get the 30%? Maybe. The next day, I get 2 more PQLs and all of a sudden it's at 30. So depending on the day I look at it, there might be an achievement or a non-achievement. So while it is important to have measurable goals that you can point to and say, well, 30% is my 100% success, it's often good to have a fail if criteria. And more often than not, I like to do that over trend. So if my goal at 100% success is 30% conversion rate by the end of September, then my fail criteria is probably going to be less than 27%. Or I'm going to throw my trailing 3-month, my trailing 6-month average is less than 27%. Because it shows that I'm not even trending towards overall success. So fail criteria allows you to have that buffer, but ideally and ultimately, we should be aiming towards 30%. So here's a couple of examples of how those goals might look, actually plotted out and presented to your team. And this is something you should be doing monthly, quarterly, whatever your general reporting cadence is. But it's important to go through the work and actually have written down, recorded, and accurate goals to present to your team. Why is that? Well, we can see here we've got a simple goal column. We've got a KPI and a monitoring, which indicates our how we're going to measure, right? And what source of truth we're going to use to measure that goal achievement. The on-track column there represents our ongoing reporting. So we actually are following our achievement. We actually are monitoring it and reporting on it because it is important. And then our fail criteria there is for everyone else. What you'll see in those KPIs, these are essentially how we're going to achieve the goal. And this allows you to then cascade that total SMART goal, that total simple goal, down to your team members and allocate tasks and responsibilities depending on the area of expertise. There's another example of how a SMART goal, overarching SMART goal, is then broken down into OKRs. We now have the ability to individually see key results and how that's going to contribute to the total goal achievement. Remembering you're going to have access to this deck after the presentation, so feel free to send any questions you might have about how to build out SMART goals, how to cascade SMART goals down to team members, or how you can establish overarching company SMART goals and then OKRs for individual teams. Okay, moving on to crush a campaign. The crush a campaign really implores you to focus on one particular aspect of your funnel or your conversion rate at any given time. If you have too many things going on, then your effort is going to be diluted. Your resources are going to be diluted, particularly when it comes to ad spend. So the idea of focusing on a particular campaign and message for a particular part of time, and this sort of brings in that SMART goal principles, is really important. So how do we do that? Well, we want to have a really clear and testable hypothesis. We want to be able to capture the nature of the change, what we're doing, and what we think the outcome will be. And then we develop an effective plan to test. Okay, so we don't do sort of weak tests. We come in with a strong hypothesis about what we believe will happen. We thoroughly test it, monitor it, and then we adjust from the outcome. What does that look like? So a hypothesis statement is generally going to follow if, then, and because. And if we can structure that campaign like that, it's going to set us up for success because we'll get really, really high detail in what we're trying to see. So in our example, we're trying to increase our PQL conversion rate. So if we add a progressive status bar to our onboarding flow, then users will understand how many steps are left to activate, thus increasing PQLs. And we know this will have an impact because our current data around screen recordings show that our users get lost on the initial platform screen. Now, I don't think this is an uncommon problem for a lot of people. PQL status, or what our clients do once they're inside our platform in a SaaS environment, is really something that is eye-opening when you start to observe user behavior. So using that user behavior that we've already observed, using that data point, we can then go, well, I think that I've seen success in other companies. I've seen other companies use status bars. We are inclined to move towards a gamified sort of progress in any sort of process we're following. If we do it as a company, I think this is going to happen because of the data I've already seen. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it sets the benchmark for what you expect to see, and then you can validate whether you actually see that over time. Any questions on this particular aspect? I don't see any in the chat, so we'll probably just move on. Any questions you want to put in there, we can address at the end. So variants on ads and landing pages. It used to be that Google Ads was set up so you had to manually go in there and add multiple headlines, multiple descriptions, and then really be careful on how you adjusted those variants. Now it's super simple for AI to go in there and help you out to make variants on headings, descriptions, etc., depending on the keywords you want to rank for and depending on your general campaign structure. Google Ads in and of itself has made it easy to create multiple variants and experiments on ads. The variants that you want to put forward is to maximize your local outcomes quickly. And what I mean when I say local outcomes, in that if you're very specific on a campaign keyword and you're very specific on a theme that you're trying to go after, being able to iterate quickly on that theme through those variants will allow you to find a local maximum for that particular campaign spend, whether it is return on ad spend, whether it is cost per click, whether it is total ad spend, whatever it is, being able to run multiple variants over a short period of time enables you to spend efficiently. This is what it might look like once you've generated something from AI moving in there. And this is just an example of, say, what Baremetrics might look at in a campaign for analytics dashboards, SaaS analytics dashboards, etc. But being able to do this quickly is something that is absolutely accessible to everyone, and everyone should be doing it. So again, the foundational principle here is you might be running Google Ads as a SaaS company. The fundamental standard you should be looking to apply is making sure that every ad has a variant and is leading to a relevant landing page. You shouldn't be creating variants on ads that then go to a generic homepage because we lose the scent, we lose the message, and you will lose valuable traffic. What do variants look like? Well, it could be a type of ad, it could be the type of campaign that you're running, whether it's a single keyword ad group or whether it is a robust campaign that touches on multiple keyword groups. The medium of your campaign as well, what your CTAs might look like on the landing page, whether you have violators. Violators are things like aggressive headers, pop-ups, swooping arrows pointing to a CTA, something that goes against the grain of your color scheme, of your formatting, of your UI, whatever it might be. The H1 that you have, variants can be, this is one of the most common experiments we will run, is a variation on the H1 to see whether that increases a click-through on the immediate CTA thereafter. The hero image, the nav bar, testimonies versus features, the list can go on and on. But essentially, once you've established a baseline of traffic to a homepage, to a landing page, to a feature page, you then have the ability to go all the way back up to the top and start to adjust who you're targeting for that particular page, how you're targeting them, what you expect them to do once they get to that page, and then how you're monitoring the variation in what they're doing when they get to that page. The example I've applied here, these are how you run experiments in Google Ads, the top one here. The bottom one is how we run experiments in HubSpot if you're using that as your CMS. You can run an A/B variant on a landing page. You can run an adaptive test, which is only show this page to this particular subset of customers. There's a huge array of tools out there, free or paid, that allow you to do rapid experimentation and reach a rapid conclusion on any variant experiments you might be running. Fundamentally, experimentation is something that everyone should be doing. And again, it's something as simple as running a quick landing page experiment, picking one of those things throughout the month and going, this month, we're going to adjust our H1 and we're going to see what happens to our click-throughs to free trial. Something as simple as that, right? And your smart test is just that. Simple, measurable. You're going to see the traffic come through. You expect your CTA to increase because you adjusted your H1 to be more specific to the ad campaign you're currently running, whatever it might be. I've added in a link here, booking.com. They run thousands of concurrent experiments. And this is not only to show you that experimentation should be accessible to everyone, but the fact that you don't have to do, experimentation doesn't have to be this big thing that you have to apply all these resources to, that you have to create this entire change management plan, this entire strategy around. It can really be around rapid, iterative, small-scale experiments that give you a test and a result, right? What that looks like for booking.com, how are they able to run thousands at a time? It's something as simple as adding in an additional line to the review that encouraged, walking around this neighborhood. Did that increase the click-through on that particular ad? Over here, they added a date to the checkout for children's. And in that case, it had a positive result on the key metric. So they implemented the change. Things as simple as that. So when you think about it, don't get overwhelmed by the idea that experimentation has to be this big, scary, large, resource-intensive thing. It can be as simple as adjusting your H1. It can be as simple as adjusting the color of your CTA for a month. See what happens. Do something rather than nothing. Because as you continue to iterate on those ideas and you see a change in your traffic, in your CTA, then you're going to be more encouraged and more confident in implementing bigger, larger experiments over time. Why do we do it? Because we always have room for improvement. We spend all this time and effort generating organic content. We optimize our blog posts. We spend money on ads, right? There's always room for improvement. As our traffic is coming through, we can do more with them. Think about your own journey as a user when you go to a platform and you start clicking around, right? You will identify areas where they lose you. And that's whether because you clicked on something and it didn't click. That's because you hovered over something you thought you could click on and you couldn't. It's because you went to download something and the resource wasn't there and you left, or the load time took too long, right? Every SaaS company is going to have an element of those friction points throughout their funnel. You fix one element, there's still another element there. There's always room for improvement. We should always be experimenting to find the optimal way to bring people into our platform. It lowers our CAC. We are promoting a more efficient spend. We're spending all that money to acquire customers, whether that's organic or paid. We should be able to continue to improve that conversion rate to lower the CAC. And experimentation is free. As I mentioned, it's as simple as going in and adjusting your H1. It's as simple as changing the color scheme of your homepage, adding a new hero image, right? There's so many things you can do in there that don't cost money, but could elicit a huge outcome on your revenue in total, right? This is just an example of one of the workflows we've done in a sister company of ours. But essentially, just by going through and adding some additional information on how they were going through their onboarding flow, they were able to increase their conversion from trial to PQL from 1.4 to 8.26%. And again, it was as simple as doing some minor formatting changes inside the app. Why should we do it as well? We should be looking at multivariate experimentations, so adjusting things as we go. And we're trying to get the short-term enhancements done so we can achieve the support to overall goals. So the overall goal is obviously increase visitors, increase trials, then doing multivariate testing at the start of that, CTA adjustments, email adjustments, subject line, etc. Then it will get us to that local and global maxima a little bit quicker. Now, statistical significance can become quite a heavy topic, and I'm not going to stand here and wax lyrical on how to get to statistical significance. But the foundation idea here is when you do an experiment, make sure that the result that is apparent is significant enough that you're going to implement the change or deny the change. You need to be confident that it's not just by chance that this happened. You need to be confident that the particular change you made had an impact on the particular aspect you were trying to measure, and that it subsequently is statistically significant. Now, if you want to really get into the details here, I've added a link in to a refresher doc there that talks in detail how to identify statistically significant results. But what you generally want to see is you want to increase the statistical significance of your results to the point where you decrease the amount of chance that went into that, right? It may well be that you launch a new H1 right around the time that a large acquisition happened in your industry that happened to a competitor. So you see a spike in referral traffic from people trying to understand the market a little bit better, and you attribute it to your H1. Being able to have a statistically significant result means that you followed that data from the H1 change to the increase in click-throughs, because if you're just measuring, say, traffic, it might have spiked a lot and you went, well, great, that was what we were after. But actually, if you dig a little bit deeper, it wasn't statistically significant because you didn't let it run long enough, and the variation that you saw wasn't enough to warrant implementing that change. The N equals 30 is a generally good rule of thumb in that every experiment where you're targeting a particular segment of your conversion funnel should have at least 30 N equals 30, that is 30 activations through that experiment, in order to cast that assumption across the entire sample of the entire breadth of your user base. So an N equals 30 sample size should be enough to get a normal distribution of the outcome. It is a good indicator that that will be the outcome you're seeking. But really, reading that refresher, getting into the details, there's a lot of heavy maths in there, but really the foundation is make sure you have a significant outcome to warrant the change. Now, agreed source of truth versus single source of truth. This is an interesting one. And this is what I've found over the years to become more and more important, is that if I'm trying to identify how to measure the outcome of an experiment, how to measure the achievement of a goal, then I could be looking at one graph, one repository, one dashboard, and my COO, my board is looking at a different one. And subsequently, we have a disagreement on whether we've achieved or not. This is where you might have a single source of truth, but when you're talking amongst others and other departments, you need to have an agreed source of truth. I'm just going to drop in, it needs to be trusted, trended, and accessible. So trusted, everyone knows it to be true. Trended, it can't be something you just stood up and then it's still collecting data on. You need to be able to see trends change over time, and everyone should be able to see the same dashboard, the same report. It shouldn't be shielded or held away from anyone in particular. And this is just an example here of how we might measure trial signups as an example. If you look through here, we've got trials by page created in HubSpot. We've got number of trials in Stripe. This is just the Stripe view. There's no actual trials recorded in here. This is Bare Metrics dashboard for how we would look at a client's new trials over time. We've got down here Google Analytics, where I've set the conversion event to be trial signup, or PQL in this example. So if I'm now doing a experiment that is specifically targeting an increase in trial signups, which of these dashboards am I using? Which of these dashboards are going to be transparent? Which of these are they all accessible by everyone? And does this represent the data that I want to be monitoring and having an impact on? That's what you need to understand. So an agreed source of truth. I'll pause there for any questions. We whizzed through that in about 30 minutes, which is good. I know we've only got a little bit of time left. I don't see any questions coming through the chat. We might have a few. But what I'd like to offer now, so we've just gone through the entire presentation around foundational elements of how to follow the data into certain aspects of our funnel, of our trial signups, of our visitors, traffic, etc. How do I know all this, and what have we done in the past to actually, validate any of this thinking? Well, really, what it means is we've done this across multiple companies as part of our private equity firm. And as a result, we've been able to generate best practices for the changes you might think about implementing in your own company. So from what I'm offering you here, I'm going to offer you a series of slides that have best practices in regards to all those variations I talked about before. How to present your homepage, how to adjust your CTAs, your color schemes, etc. I won't go through these in detail. I'll leave these in the deck and get the deck out to you all. But essentially, what I'm offering you here is a collection of data that we've been able to establish across a private equity portfolio of SaaS companies. And we believe they represent the best practice in design, UI, UX for different components of your funnel. Again, if we think back to the very first part of this presentation, you need to understand how to apply these fundamental principles to your own environment, right? We're going to offer ideas here that say Get Started has been the highest click-through rate of any CTA on all our homepages. Does Get Started work for you? Maybe not, but maybe you should do an experiment to test it, right? Do you have a phone number available in your nav bar? For us, that has increased the number of contacts created and deals then closed. For you, maybe not, but hey, throw a phone number up for a month, see how many calls you get, right? These are all the things that will give you ideas on what you should be experimenting against your current baseline to a potential best practice. Follow that bouncing ball, follow the experiment outcome, and then figure out whether you want to implement or not. So these are above the fold. We've got best practice for nav bars here. You can see some simple things as well. No inner page should be deeper than 3 clicks away. This one's a really cool one as well. It gives you ideas on what buttons should look like, depending on the status of the button, depending on the color. We've got button color, what the color represents, what it instills into the client, into the visitor. Banner CTAs, how to craft your CTA and what it should look like. Pricing pages. This is a big one. A lot of people like to talk about pricing pages. This one constantly adjusts as well. And this is probably the most adjustable part of best practice, in that you might have SaaS plus services. You might have a multi-product SaaS that you want to break out into individual. A lot of this time, we like to keep things concise, but some of the fundamental things don't change, right? Highlighting a plan that is the most popular or the one you want to buy. How to frame your most economic plan against the most expensive plan, as an example. Where to position your CTA, how to get them to click through, whether you have visible pricing or not for enterprise plans, etc. That's another one. Sign up pages. This is a good one as well. This is where you probably find the most variability in your ability to sign up. One thing that I've found in all of the companies I've worked with is that often we will build a sign up page with the information we believe we want to receive from the customer. More often than not, it's going to be full name, email address, potentially company name, and then we might ask them to generate a password. If it comes down to it, you might be able to think to yourself, well, hey, actually, why do we need their full name? Is it so we can address them in an email sequence? Sure. Do we need to collect it now? Maybe not. Username. Do we need a username, or could we generate a random sequence that then allocates them a username? Therefore, we don't have to ask them to put something in. Do we need a phone number? Are we using a phone number to validate them as a lead, or are we using that as a contact mechanism? Password. Does the password need to be generated now, or can I give them immediate access to the platform and then send them a password for subsequent signups? Have a think about whether you're creating a trial sign-up form or any sort of sign-up form because that's the information you think you need, versus flipping that conversation around and saying, what's the minimum amount of information I need to get this person access to my product? Then we can work on doing things later on. Superhuman, the mailbox that some people might be using, is a great example of a longer sign-up flow, but at each stage, it's only asking for a few quick snippets of information. It's lauded as quite an intuitive and quite a progressive onboarding flow when it comes to signups. But what it really comes down to is we're more inclined to do a small amount now, move to the next page, see that I'm on step 2 of 8, and continue on, than having to fill out 8 fields all at once, right? That's a high psychological load I have to go through. Best way to validate this is through heat mapping. Go and get any sort of free tool that allows you to heat map a particular page, put it on your sign-up page, and watch when people dwell on particular fields, how long they spend thinking of a password, thinking of what they have to write, versus actually getting through and signing up. That's the best way to validate your sign-up page. There's some extra information there for you as well. But that brings us to the end of session 1. I've got a question in the chat here. What is a good sequence or important KPIs to track for early stage companies with very limited resources? We're at 200K ARR and growing. What would that progression look like? So what would be a good sequence or key important KPIs to track for early stage companies? So when I think about early stage companies, and I hark back to, I'm just going to close this down so I can speak to the screen a little bit better. We talk about the levers of growth in Bear Metrics. And what do those levers look like? It looks like new, it looks like expansion, contraction, churn, and reactivation, okay? So at any given time for a startup, you're more inclined to be focused on new user acquisition and rapid user acquisition to show product market fit. When you're VC backed, that's almost expected, right? You need to show new user acquisition. So CAC sort of goes out the door. You start spending venture capital on expensive ad groups against competitors in order to increase your new acquisition rate. When we start to look at retention over time, you'll often find that those customers maybe don't fit the ICP and they drop off. But as long as you're seeing growth, then VCs are happy. Bootstrapping is a different story. You don't have the amount of resources you need to continue to increase your CAC when the LTV or the top lifetime of the customer isn't there. My recommendation to you would be at any given quarter, focus on one of those particular aspects of growth. So if it is new growth, let's focus on economical and efficient new user acquisition. Position your goals around increasing new user acquisition by maybe looking at your visitor to trial conversion rate. Let's start to experiment with our visitor to trial conversion rate and increase the number of trials I get, right? If you've got a healthy funnel and you believe you're pretty well optimized, then let's look at trial to activation or whatever that PQL status might be for you, your value metric, right? So there's some of the things you might do around new. Then we talk about churn. Well, you recognize that you're onboarding customers, but for whatever reason, they start to drop off after 3 months. Okay, so for this next quarter, we're really going to focus on decreasing churn. We're going to reach out to our customers. We're going to offer quarterly business reviews. We're going to increase that gap between the cost of their subscription and their willingness to pay, i.e. increase the value they're getting. We're going to try and convert our quarterly subscriptions to annual. So we increase that time spent with us. We're going to focus on churn just for that quarter. Reactivation is another one. Those that have already churned. What was it about that churn that made those people leave, right? Did they leave us for a competitor? Did we not have the features they wanted? Do we understand why they churn? Do we have the ability to understand why they churn with using a tool like Cancellation Insights in Baremetrics, for example, where we've been able to gather why people are churning? We then use that intelligence to run a reactivation campaign. Hey, I know you left us for a competitor 6 months ago. Just to let you know, we're offering a 30% discount for all returning customers, and we'd be happy to do a free white glove onboarding where we input all your data from competitor X to us, whatever that might be. So reactivation again. The KPIs around each of these elements will essentially come down to MRR. But when we break that down even further and we talk about new MRR, we look at retention, how much of that customer cohort is staying with us over time. Churn rate, again, how quickly are they churning out? And then we're going to look at things like overall CAC to LTV. CAC to LTV, customer acquisition cost to lifetime value, is something that is less relevant to very early stage startups. But as you have trended data over time and considering you're at 200K ARR, that you're starting to see that growth, you should be able to identify how much it's costing you to acquire a new customer and then how long are they staying with you. And until you can get those to balance up quite equally, then really I wouldn't be focusing on too much else. Making sure that you're spending efficiently so you can maintain your bootstrap status and making sure you're doing everything you can to extend the lifetime value of the customers you're working so hard to get. That's where I think you should go. So just to recap on that question, a good sequence, I'm not quite sure what you mean around good sequence, but essentially important KPIs to me are to focus on the fundamental levers of growth, pick one for a set period of time and really analyze what part of that lever of growth you want to affect, and then start to change those levers and watch what happens. Okay, any more questions? Okay, great. Well, team, thank you so much for taking the time to come and join us today at Baremetrics. If you want to reach out personally, please let me know. I'm happy to do one-on-one sessions. I'm happy to go through how to establish goals and execute on those goals on a time. But if nothing else, I encourage you to attend the subsequent sessions. They'll be different. We'll go into different parts of the standards that we currently apply across Baremetrics and wider Xenon. And hopefully you all got something out of today. Thank you all for your time, and hopefully see you again next week.